After he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. Now, during those days, he went out to the mountain to pray, and he spent the night in prayer to God. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. A voice said, "This is my beloved Son. With him I am well pleased." Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. What do you think the writers want us to notice? Here's one more. He was praying in a certain place, and after he had finished, one of his disciples said to him, "Lord, teach us to pray." Have you noticed the disciples never asked Jesus, "Lord, teach us how to heal the sick. Lord, teach us how to cast out demons. Teach us how to answer a question with a question. Teach us how to confuse the Pharisees the way you do with your genius use of Scripture." They ask him, "Teach us how to pray." Do you think that the disciples observed what we just observed in all those verses? That prayer seems to be at the heart of Jesus' life, the source for him of everything else that he did. So here are some things I want to pick out for us to notice from Jesus' prayer life. Number one, he had one. The Son of God, as a human, living in reliance on the power of the Spirit, seeking the guidance of the Father, had a prayer life. Jesus knew that he needed to regularly get away from the noise of the crowds, the busyness of his ministry, and pray. Number two, it had a rhythm and a regularity. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places to pray. Not when he felt like he was running on empty. Not when he felt like he'd hit a wall. Just regularly, often withdrawing to lonely places to pray. And as a Jew, this would have been what he would have grown up with, this regular rhythm of daily prayer, 3 times a day, learning to pray the Scriptures. But you know, in the contemporary charismatic church, that's a big phrase that maybe people don't know what it means, but we're one of those. We're a contemporary charismatic church. In many ways, we've drifted away from prizing and treasuring ritual and repetition. And we've placed a high value on spontaneity. And there's a strength to this. I think the reason that that's happened is because we don't want to just go through the motions. We don't want to just do religious things because they're what we do. We want things to be real. We want to be authentic. And so we'll pray what's really on our hearts. And we'll do what really feels right in the moment. And there's strength to that, don't get me wrong. But I think there's also a real loss to that. And the reality is that throughout the ages, throughout the last 2,000 years, the church as a whole has relied on ritual and repetition to sustain its life. And when we move away from that and abandon it completely, we lose something. And for us to look at 2,000 years of the church and say, we don't need that, it's kind of arrogant. I was speaking to someone recently who I'm meeting with regularly, new Christian, and I said, what's your prayer life like? And they said, well, you know, I don't want to have like a routine of prayer, because I don't want to do it just because it's what I'm supposed to do. And so I mostly just pray as and when I feel like it. And it sounds spiritual, but it's spiritual suicide. if we only depend on our good feelings for when we come to God in prayer, we're destined for failure in our spiritual growth. Listen to this from an author and an Anglican minister called Tish Harrison Warren. She writes, "For most of my life, I didn't know there were different kinds of prayer. Prayer meant one thing only, talking to God with words I came up with. Prayer was wordy, unscripted, self-expressive, spontaneous, and original. And I still pray this way every day. Free-form prayer is good and indispensable way to pray. But I've come to believe that in order to sustain faith over a lifetime, we need to learn different ways of praying. I brought a friend to my Anglican church, and she objected to how our liturgy, that's the shape of the service, contained, in her words, other people's prayers. She felt that prayer should be an original expression of one's own thoughts, feelings, and needs. But over a lifetime, the ardor of our belief will wax and wane. This is a normal part of the Christian life. Inherited prayers and practices of the church tether us to belief far more securely than our own vacillating perspective or self-expression." Here's the point of what she's saying. My own fervency of belief and faith is going to ebb and flow. That's completely normal. If you found that in your own life and you're thinking, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. It's normal. And so in those moments, we can't depend on our own passion to bring us to prayer again. We need something that sustains us through those moments. And much of the church has recognized this through the centuries and continues to recognize this, that we shouldn't just rely on our own ability to pray. But it's good to have these rituals, rhythms that sustain us and carry us when we don't feel like it. And this was Jesus' experience as a Jew, and then that we see in his life, regularly getting away to pray. Interestingly, as Jesus hung on the cross, this lowest moment for him, the most difficult, painful, lonely moment of his life, he doesn't pray something spontaneous. He prays Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? In this most difficult moment, Jesus relied on somebody else's prayer that he had learned to pray from the scriptures. Number 3, Jesus' prayer life integrated solitude and silence. These are two spiritual practices, again, that throughout church history have been really valued. But I don't know about you guys, I never heard about them until 3 years ago. The disciplines of solitude and silence, they do what they say on the tin. It's about getting away to a quiet place, to be alone with God, away from the noise and the distraction. Almost all of the times that it mentions Jesus getting away to pray, it's he went to a deserted place, a lonely place, up the mountain to pray. Jesus knew that for his prayer life to thrive, he needed to get away from the crowds and have extended time alone with God in a quiet place. These are two practices that the church has prized over the centuries, but are pretty new for me in my experience. And they're so valuable, they've enriched my prayer life. We're going to come back to this in a bit. Number 4, Jesus' prayer life involved his disciples. Did you notice so many moments where Jesus brings his disciples with him up the mountain? Or after he'd sent them out on this mission to go preach and heal the sick and stuff, they come back, they're so fired up. Jesus, listen to all the things we did. And he said, great, let's get away to a quiet place and rest. He's teaching them. And they're asking him questions. Teach us how to pray. He's teaching them his practice of prayer. And so we're going to dig into these and how they can be worked out in our own lives. But first I want to just touch on 4 things that I think get in the way of our prayer life. 4 things that make it difficult for us. I put out a question on Instagram this week, a bit of crowdsourcing. I said, what makes it hard to pray? And the answers were really fascinating. And by far, the most common one basically comes down to this. Bad theology. Theology just means what we believe about God. For a lot of people, even when we have right theology in our minds, it hasn't always got to our hearts and our gut. A lot of theology, I think, is subconscious. Let me give you an example. right? So a lot of people, the part they struggle with prayer is they feel a sense of unworthiness, right? I need to get things in order first. I've not been living close to God, and so I don't expect to be able to come to him and pray to him and experience his presence and have him listen to me. I just feel distant from God. I feel cold, I feel dry, whatever it is. Now, most of us can acknowledge that's not true, right? This is about grace. There's access to God whenever, wherever you're at, however much you've screwed up. This is about his commitment to us and his love for us. But actually, subconsciously, many of us still operate that way. Oh, I can't pray. I've screwed up recently. I need to get things in order first. Because a lot of the things we think about God happen at a gut level or a heart level rather than just things that we know are true in our heads. And so there are these wrong ideas that God is just disappointed. God doesn't want to hear from me right now. God's waiting for me to clean my life up before I can come to him in prayer. And when we say it out loud, we know that's not how it works. But at a subconscious level, that is how it works. And it's how it works out in practice. And so we don't pray because we believe there's this emotional distance, this gap that needs to be bridged. Even if it's not true. God has already bridged the gap. He's already closed the distance. Number two, we often don't pray because we don't really believe that prayer is effective enough. We live in this world where we basically get whatever we want when we want it. Click of a button, food shows up at the door. Click of a button, all of the entertainment ever on my TV screen. Click of a button, order literally anything you could think of to order. Amazon has it somewhere and it'll show up tomorrow. Everything we want, as soon as we want it. Instant entertainment. And technology has built this world where we can kind of ignore the seasons and ignore the rhythms of nature. Although that'll be a bit harder to do this winter than most. We just get what we want when we want it. We've built this insulated world where we can control outcomes and find solutions for just about anything. And so the work of prayer is just a little bit too slow and ineffective for our liking. We'd much rather take things into our own hands and find a solution or try to control the outcomes. Prayer is not immediate enough. It doesn't get results quickly enough. It isn't effective enough. And maybe we've experienced the harshness of that in disappointment of unanswered prayer. Just doesn't seem to work. Tried, he didn't do what I wanted him to do. So next time I'll just take matters into my own hands. Thank you very much. And you know, Christians from ages past were far more familiar than us with the truth that we are not in control. No matter how much our technologized, it's not a word, but you know what I mean, world will try to convince us that we are in control. We can control things. We can control outcomes. We can get whatever we want. We can build whatever we want. We can buy whatever we want. We can fix whatever problems we have, but we're not in control. And we need to learn that in prayer. We are not in control. And prayer is the slow, patient work of entrusting ourselves and our lives to God and trusting him with the outcomes. Number 3, prayer isn't entertaining enough. We live in a culture that has conditioned us to be constantly entertained. I was listening to a sermon recently. It was a great joke where the guy was like, you remember that thing from the 90s called boredom? No one is ever bored anymore, right? When was the last time you were bored? I was thinking this week of this, like one of those random memories that there's no real reason for you to remember it, but for some reason it's stuck in your mind. Just being sat in a dentist waiting room before I had a phone, bored out of my mind. Never happens anymore. Every moment is filled with scrolling or watching or listening. Constant stimulation. And our culture is conditioning us just to do the things that we enjoy doing. Do what makes you feel good. You do you. Follow your heart. Do what makes you happy. All these cute little catchphrases we put on t-shirts. Give up on anything that doesn't meet that criteria. The truth is, prayer is often boring. And everyone feels like they're not allowed to say that. It's true, isn't it? Prayer is often boring. It's pretty unspectacular most of the time. And so we're just not motivated enough to do it because it's not going to give us the little kick that Netflix will, or that social media will, or that the likes on my latest post will. We've been conditioned to need to be entertained, and prayer doesn't do that. And so it's hard. Fourthly, prayer is hard because we don't know how. This was the one that I wasn't expecting when I asked that question on Instagram, and there were all sorts of different kind of responses that came in that just made me think, people just got questions. And I wonder how free they feel to ask people those questions. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So, here's how we can learn from Jesus how to pray. Number one, it starts with knowing that we're loved. This person that I've been meeting every week, who recently became a Christian, we've been working through the Matthew material that we've done in our life groups, for those of you who've been in life groups over the last few months. Basically, this material, it starts in chapter 3 with Jesus' baptism. And this moment Jesus gets baptized, the Holy Spirit comes on him, and the Father affirms, "This is my beloved Son with whom I'm well pleased." Then chapter 4, Jesus goes out into the wilderness, and the devil's tempting him, and every temptation starts with, "If you're really the Son of God." And it's so significant that right before Jesus had this moment where the Father affirmed, "This is my beloved Son." So that when all these temptations are coming at him, he's rooted in that identity of being loved. And no joke, every week, whatever we read and talk about, there will come a moment in the conversation where this person will say, "I guess it all comes back to that first session of just knowing who you are in God, knowing your identity as a loved child of God, and living from that place." And every week I'm like, yeah, it does. That's where it starts. And we never grow beyond that. We are people who at baptism have received this new identity, the affirmation of the Father that we are loved. That is who we are. But until we grasp that, not just in our minds, but in our hearts, in our guts, in our bodies, prayer will always be hard for us. Because we'll always pray as though we've got something to prove or something to earn. We'll always pray wondering if God's really listening or if he really wants to respond and give us what we're asking for. You know what kids are like. They don't stop to wonder if their parents want to give them what they're asking for. They just charge on in and ask, right? That's the kind of relationship God wants for us. To know that we're loved. To be deeply rooted in that as our identity, to never move beyond that, but just always be going deeper and deeper into it. When we grasp that, a lot of our problems with prayer will vanish. And, you might be thinking, how do I get that? How do I get there? For some people, there's like this moment where it all just clicks. And it's not just like this head knowledge, but like you receive the experience of the love of the Father. But for all of us, whether you have that moment or not, we have to abide in that love. Just stay there, live there, dwell there, put down roots there. Keep coming back to that over and over again. If you feel like that's just something that hasn't clicked for you that needs to, please get someone to pray for you later. The Father wants you to experience his love, not just know about it in theory. Anyway, number 2, get a rhythm. Ritual is good. Ritual is not bad. Ritual can become bad if it becomes empty and lifeless. But the solution then is not to get rid of the ritual, but is to figure out why it's become empty and lifeless and ask God to help you do something about that. I have been given a ritual program to rehab my knee, which I injured in January. And so 4 or 5 times a week, I'm supposed to be in the gym training this knee to get it back to where it needs to be. The last 2 weeks, I have not been to the gym because I don't feel like it. I just don't want to get up earlier to go to the gym. And so for 2 weeks, my knee has suffered for lack of training. If I only ever do what I'm supposed to do to rehab my knee when I feel like it, my knee is doomed to never be better. The point of the training program is that I stick at it whether I feel like it or not, and it gets me where I need to be. Guys, we are sinners in recovery. We are learning to be who we now are in Jesus Christ. And if we only pray when we feel like it, we'll just never pray. The point of a ritual and a rhythm of prayer is it sustains us throughout a lifetime, when we feel like it, when we don't feel like it, when we're high, when we're low, and in all of the boring middle parts that make up most of our lives. The ritual sustains us. A rhythm sustains us. God's power is available to us for our transformation into Christ-likeness. But in the words of St. Augustine, without God, we can't, but without us, he won't. God is waiting for our participation. He's not just going to zap us. He's inviting us into a relationship where we're changed in relationship with him. Only praying when we feel like it will not be enough. So spontaneity in our prayer life. Praying just what comes to mind when we feel like it. That's good, that's healthy, but on its own, it's not enough to sustain our faith over a lifetime. Check out this quote from one of my favorite authors called Ronald Rolheiser. He's got a fantastic name. He writes, Dietrich Bonhoeffer had a little mantra he would sometimes use when he was preaching to a young couple on their wedding day. He would tell them, today you are young and very much in love, and you think that your love will sustain your marriage. It won't, but your marriage can sustain your love. That is true too for prayer. We think that good intentions and energy will sustain our rituals of prayer, but they cannot. Rather, our rituals of prayer can sustain our goodwill and our energy. The great spiritual writers assure us that without exception, we will all have seasons within which our prayer is dry, boring, and can be done only on the basis of dogged willpower and commitment. Those same writers then go on to affirm that because this will be true for everyone, the one single, non-negotiable rule for prayer is simply this: show up. Show up regularly, irrespective of feelings and irrespective of method. Similarly, Pete Greig, the founder of the 24/7 prayer movement, he writes this: after decades of night and day prayer, I have come to believe that 99% of it is just showing up, making the effort to become consciously present to the God who is constantly present to us. We need a regularity, a rhythm, a ritual to our prayer that sustains us when we don't feel like it. So I think, practical suggestion, don't have to do it. It would be good for all of us to work towards a daily rhythm of prayer. Start with once a day, if that's where you're at. If you've got no rhythm at all, start with once a day. A moment in your day, preferably first thing in the morning, but it doesn't have to be, where you can get with God. And you don't have to bring a list. You don't have to fill that space with noise, but be with God. Come on to other practical suggestions in there too. Just every day. This is my time. Book it in. Nothing else will take this time. Every day. This is when I come to sit with God, even if it's for 5 minutes. Even if it's just when you're in the shower in the morning. This is my time. Every day. And if you feel like you've got that, and you're pretty happy with your once a day, push it to twice a day. Go wild. Get a noon slot, lunchtime slot, on your break in work, even if it's 5 minutes. Pause. Take a breath. Bring the worries of your day, the successes of your day, the failures of your day to God. Ask for help and for grace. Reset. And then you carry on with your day. And if you've nailed twice a day, go for 3 times a day. Pro level. I'm joking, there are no levels. Sorry, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. Before bed, what if you just turned off the TV 10 minutes earlier? Or put the phone away 10 minutes earlier? And just took a minute to reflect on your day with the Lord. Say sorry for the ways you screwed up. Thank him for all the goodness and the blessing. Ask for his help where you need wisdom for decisions. Reset. And then you go again the next day. This rhythm can become like a trellis. That all the spontaneous in-between stuff can grow off it. But what you'll find is the more rhythm and structure you have, the more the spontaneous stuff will happen around it. What do you think might be the impact if starting tomorrow, all of us committed, whether it's once or 3 times, every day I'm going to have a rhythm of prayer, and we stuck at it for the rest of our lives, every day, every day, every day. It's boring, but every day, every day, every day. Kind of want to give up on this. Every day, every day. Oh, it's got really good again recently. Every day, every day, every day. Who do you think we might become? What impact do you think it might have in our lives as God seeks to transform us through those times? But ultimately, guys, wherever you're at with prayer and wherever you feel you need to be, in the words of John Chapman, pray as you can, not as you can't. Don't worry about where you feel like you should be and where you're not. Where you feel like you should do but you can't do. Where are you now? Start there. Start there. Don't worry about the rest. Just start where you are. Okay, need to speed up. Number 3, integrate solitude and silence. We live in a noisy, busy world that is conditioning us to be distracted. Can I just ask, no shame at all, I'm putting my hand up for this. By a show of hands, who in the room struggles that when they try to pray, they find their minds wandering all over the place? Most of us, yeah. It's because it's the world we live in, right? Just constant activity, constant noise, constant distraction. And so you try to sit down and be still, and all of a sudden your mind's just going... Need to reply to that person. Need to do that thing. Need to tidy that up. Need to remember that. Right? Just all these things that are filling our minds because we've never had a moment just to be still, and so our mind's just going to overdrive when we try to be still. Because there is no solitude and silence in our lives for most of us. First time I heard about these 2 disciplines of solitude and silence, took kind of account of my life, and I realized I have none of it. There is no silence in my life. When I'm walking the dog, I'm listening to a book. When I'm cooking, I've got a YouTube video on. When I'm in the car, there's music on. Before we were married, I'd fall asleep listening to something. Literally, no silence anywhere in my day. So no wonder when I try and be quiet with God, my mind can't get there. Morning, you all right? We need a practice of solitude and silence to teach us how to quiet our inner worlds. Here's what Rowan Williams says. Silence somehow reaches to the root of our human problem. Our words help to strengthen the illusions with which we surround, protect, and comfort ourselves, building up this defense mechanisms around us. Without silence, we shan't get any closer to knowing who we really are before God. Writer Henri Nouwen says that solitude is like a furnace of transformation. That sounds a bit hyperbolic, doesn't it? But what he's saying is when you get on your own with God and you put all the distractions and the noise to one side for a minute and you just sit with him, all of a sudden you face up to who you really are. All of the ways that we distract ourselves and busy ourselves and project a particular image of ourselves, and then we get alone with God and we just say, this is who I really am. This is the pain that I'm sitting with right now, that I've not been processing. I've just been distracting myself, numbing myself from it. This is the ugliness of the sin that I know is in my heart that I've been avoiding talking to you about. When we finally get alone with God, it becomes this furnace of transformation in our lives where we actually start to address the things we need to address with God. Dallas Willard writes, in solitude we find the distance, the perspective from which we can see in the light of eternity the created things that trap, worry, and oppress us. And we just stop for a minute and go, oh man, I've been so weighed down by this thing. I've been chasing after this thing. I've been desiring this thing. I've been thinking this way. But I've been so busy, life is so fast-paced, so distracted, I haven't stopped to think about it. And then we get with God, and we turn off all the noise, and we get quiet with him. We say, this is where I'm really at. This is who I really am. Jesus didn't just have a regular prayer life. He also regularly withdrew to quiet places, lonely places, deserted places, to be alone in the quiet with God. The Son of God knew he needed this. And that was in a time before smartphones and Netflix and Amazon Prime. Pete Greig writes, the best way to start praying, therefore, is actually to stop praying, to pause, to be still, to put down your prayer list and surrender your own personal agenda, to stop talking at God long enough to focus on the wonder of who he actually is, to be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. I don't know about you guys, but I find that the longer you follow Jesus, the more you begin to learn that he moves at a walking pace. And we've been conditioned for the hustle and the bustle and the hurry and the get to the end goal, find the solution, get the thing done. And Jesus says, are you weary? Take my yoke upon you. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. Come walk at my pace. We find prayer so hard because our minds and our lives and our bodies are constantly active, constantly distracted. So when we try to stop and be still, our minds just keep going. Our souls are busy. It's God in us. And if you find that that's your experience, it's a good sign that you really need silence and solitude in your life. And it'll be so hard. But if you stick at it, over time, you will learn to be still with God. And then after a while, you'll notice that that stillness is starting to permeate the rest of your life too. Less irritable, less reactive, less anxious, because you're learning in your rhythm of quiet, still, silence, solitude with God to have his peace and his stillness permeate your soul and change you into a different kind of person. I'm pretty much done. But number 4, ask for help. This isn't something that can happen in a sermon. But this really struck me this week. So both when I was chatting to the person I was meeting with in the week, and then in people's replies, all sorts of just questions about prayer. Struggles people have with prayer. And I was thinking, like, people just need discipleship. People need someone who's been doing it longer than they have to walk with them, to be their friend, and to be a sounding board for their questions and to help them along. Don't you feel like you need that? And so ask for help. Find someone who's been doing it longer than you. The longer the better. And ask them. Say, hey, I've got these questions about prayer that I feel embarrassed to ask because I feel like I'm supposed to have figured it out by now, but I actually haven't. Can I ask you my questions about prayer? Can you help me? Discipleship, this process of growth into Christ-likeness, it's supposed to be a community affair. It's supposed to be something we do together, something that we help each other on. So ask for help. Learn from people who've been doing it longer than you. So our habit for growth of this week is pray. And hopefully you've had some helpful tips from the life of Jesus to integrate into that. I'm going to stop and pray. I'm going to take a minute just to process some of that. And then we're going to do something that might also be a useful practice in your prayer life. I'm going to do something and we'll participate. Sound good? Cool. You can kill the Facebook if that's going. That was very violent, wasn't it?